So, good. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining me today. So, I wanted to talk to you about quite a sensitive subject today, actually, and it was all about. Actually, I've written down: if you are easily offended, you will never make it. And the reason why I am talking about this was because of an article that was on the BBC website the other day in the UK. And I'm a bit apprehensive, really, about how I actually go with this, because I could take the moral high ground and say what's popular, or I can be a little bit controversial and say how I see it. Not that I necessarily agree with how I see it, but it's how I see it nonetheless. Because I'm not an optimist, I'm not a pessimist. I consider myself a realist. I see things how they are. And you know, the world as we have it is not exactly perfect. It's far from perfect. You know, we have nepotism, we have abuse, we have all these other things. We have hi Lazaro, and we have all these things that are not right in our society, but they happen. Because ultimately, it's not. It's the game we're in. It's the game that the world is playing, and the world is not an even playing field. Yeah, everyone's got different levels and different standards that they actually work with. And one of the things I've noticed, particularly in the last few weeks, is that there's been a lot of mention about statements or things being branded about, like, oh, so and so said this, so they must be so they're racist, or so and so said this, or they are sexist, or they're misogynist, and we're using these words rather loosely as to how to say someone, because they've actually heard a statement that someone has actually said. In some cases, that may necessarily be true. However, this also comes back to dealing with the level of threshold that you actually have on how you're actually willing to on whether you actually accept it. Because let's face it, if you are easily offended, you will always be easily offended by things. And really, that does you a disservice, because what happens, the marketplace sees that you can't actually handle that level of pressure, that you can't actually handle the criticism that is actually thrown at you. And while a lot of it is really not that, when I say appropriate, look, there are a lot of idiots out there who are going to make obscene, harsh, inappropriate comments, and the difference is that, you know, sometimes if you actually want to raise your head above the parapet, if you want to get to a high position in the marketplace, you are going to actually have to accept some of that level. You're going to have to accept the level of abuse that's going to be thrown at you. It doesn't mean you have to like it, but you actually have to accept that it's going to actually come. It shows your level of threshold, and it shows in terms of how you can actually deal with that level of pressure, because if you can't and you crack up under it, people aren't going to see you as the leader or the talented person that they see you for being. Now, what spurned this Facebook Live really was an article about a lady called Diane Abbott, and she's a Labour Member of Parliament in the UK. And excuse me, I'm going to refer to my notes a second, because she said something. Yeah, she said that the abuse that is out there in politics, particularly, puts women off from entering politics. And frankly, I think she's doing women a disservice, because all it's doing is reinforcing the belief that women aren't strong enough to cope with the pressure of being in politics. And I don't think that is actually correct. That is. I think she's not doing them. I don't think she's doing women any favours. I think women actually have that level of mental strength to be able to deal with it. Or many do. I mean, some don't. Just like men. And if you actually can't handle some of what's going to actually be thrown at you, then really you are looking down a wrong career path, because there is going to be a level of scrutiny that you are going to actually have to deal with. Now, you know, particularly in the UK, in terms of politics, we've had women who are. No, actually, it's not even about women. I mean, you know, if you actually go back to 1983, there was 23 women MPs, and yet at that time we actually had a female Prime Minister. 2017, there's now 195 female MPs, and we have another female Prime Minister. Now, both those women will have undergone a strong level of they will have had to deal with a lot of abuse as they actually got to that position. But the difference was actually how did they deal with it in terms of actually getting there? Because the thing is, they got their positions of leader of their country, of this country, through their merit, not through anything else. About how they behaved, how they composed themselves, how they delivered, how they articulated, and how they actually sold themselves to the marketplace, or in the political marketplace. Particularly when politics is still actually a very dominant marketplace. But this is not just about politics. This is in any sort of profession that you actually have to deal with. I actually, if you look back at people like Oprah Winfrey or Karen Brady, for example, who became I think it was chairman of Birmingham City Football Club when she was 23. They went through a certain amount of abuse, not necessarily to the face. People said it behind their backs and things like this, but they, what they did was they actually showed their strength by delivering their results, by going, on merit. I don't really see, on my research, I haven't really seen a lot of comments about abuse coming from them. They know it exists, but their threshold was that much higher than some other people. And I will actually reiterate, I'm not saying it is actually right, but it does happen. And it's about how you deal with it. That's actually going to make it depend on how you get there. Because when you actually put someone like Diane Abbott against someone like Theresa May, and I know they're two different parties, but look at the comparison. You've got to see that Diane Abbott comes across as quite brash, quite outspoken in her language. To some points even. Her appearance in comparison to Theresa May is a factor, and we shouldn't judge her on that. But the public or perception, or people's perception, actually, if you look at neurology, people's perception will see her as not as the same leader quality as someone like Theresa May, who is quite tall. I mean, there are very different variables going on here, but who's also very composed and eloquent when she actually delivers her message. And I realise that's Diane Abbott's brand, but because you see what happens is when people that come across as brash and they come across as outspoken and they come across as loud, public perception is that they come across as less intelligent, and she's not less intelligent. She's actually a very, very smart lady. On the other hand, someone like Theresa May is very, as I said, very composed, and quite even her tone of voice is quite calm and everything. It shows that she's actually in control, and she's going to be in for a lot of abuse over the next few years. But the thing is, she's well prepared for it, because that's what makes her a leader. And just one quick point on Diane Abbott. She shouldn't have undergone half the comments that have been said about her. I mean, there's been some very horrible remarks, and the thing is, I do believe she actually has that level of resilience, because she's lasted 30 years in politics. Don't necessarily agree with nearly everything she's done, if I have to be honest, but I have to admire her tenacity and her resilience for actually dealing with it. But to actually suggest that other women it's going to put other women off coming from politics, is to insinuate that they're not really actually up to dealing with the crap that's going to actually come their way. And there is going to be crap that is going to come their way. All right. Just one thing I just wanted to cover, and this is really, and I just want to go back to the topic about offence. If you can't handle it, you are going to actually struggle to actually make it. You are going to deal with a level that criticism. Just want I remember when I was at school, and there was a game we used to play. I was in a boys' school, and we used to play a game, and it was, and we had to pick 3 women, and it was, who do you actually want to sleep with, who do you want to marry, and who do you actually want to throw off a cliff? Now, you could probably say that is fairly sexist. It just so happens that 35 years later in my daughter's school, a very similar game was actually played, virtually identical. And you know, so there are going to be comments that are going to be bandied about. I mean, I've played rugby for the best part of since I was 6 years old, and the comments I've heard in the rugby changing rooms and in certain other places where men do congregate, you know, if all those messages were, all those conversations were recorded, we'd all be hung, drawn and quartered by now, because men will be men together. I have also heard women make also quite derogatory comments about men, particularly about their anatomy. So it does actually happen. And the thing is, because we don't really want to acknowledge all this sort of publicly, we sort of just brush it under the carpet and become very politically correct with how we actually approach these things, rather than actually accept that it is actually going to happen, and we deal with it, we put up a brave face, and we just get on with what we're supposed to do and get on with our job. There was a lady, for example, in my gym. I've never spoken to her. I saw her, I didn't see her today, I saw her yesterday. She's a lady in my gym, and there's probably men who make some comments about her in the gym, and I think she knows that men make certain comments about her, but I have a huge amount of respect for her, and because this is a woman who all I see is a woman who comes to the gym and she works her arse off. She's such incredible level of mental strength and tenacity and physical endurance that she actually has, and you just can't help but admire that. And she's in there day in and day out. She's got her headphones in. She doesn't give a crap what other people think, because she's got her goal. Her focus is on getting fit. Doesn't care what other people think. And you know, when you show that level of strength that she actually has within her, and that's just, and as I said, that's just by her behaviour, you can actually see this is a woman that is either already achieved quite a significant level, or someone who's on her way to actually achieving it. And the thing, as I said, I don't want to make this about women. This goes for everybody, for both men as well. You know, if you are, and this is where I want to conclude, if you are easily offended by what people are actually saying about you, then you are really going to actually struggle to deal with what's going up higher, because the higher you get, the more crap that's going to come that way. All right. I hope that message was clear. I hope I didn't offend people with this, because it wasn't my intention. But I think really you need some clarity as to the world that we live in is a little bit more. It's not as pleasant as we'd actually want to actually believe it is, and brushing things under the carpet is not actually going to actually make it any better. Thank you for listening, and I will speak to you next week. Bye bye.